Author and pastor Levi Lusko once said, "Fear is faith in the enemy." Mark Twain once said, "Worrying is like paying a debt you don't owe." Jesus talked to a worrier, and I'm not a betting man, but I'd guess the fact that you're breathing and connecting with content digitally and through some form of social media, you've probably experienced a greater degree of worry or anxiety, which studies have shown are correlated to our social media consumption. But let's stop there before we go down a rabbit trail that could take us too far. Our word from the Word on the topic of worry comes from Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. Before reading it, let's understand some context. Jesus, the Messiah, is visiting as a guest at the house of his friends Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Mary stayed at Jesus' feet in Jesus' presence. Martha took care of the tasks before her. There's more to the story, but let's read the verses. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed, only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Let's draw out a couple things from this part of Luke's gospel. Ears, eyes, and worryship. Yes, you heard that right. That's not a word, but you'll see the point as we go along. Let's talk about ears. This in some way is a tale of two sisters. Sometimes the type A people walk away from this scripture and think, "Is my drivenness a burden?" Let me assure you, God knew everything about you, and your strengths are designed with his purpose and foreknowledge. So it's not a lesson in personalities as much as it is an opportunity for us to look at the actions and response taken. Mary sat at Jesus' feet and listened. When we genuinely listen, we can not only hear the audible sounds around us, whether it's someone speaking, we're in the middle of the woods, or somewhere in between, but we can also get insight into what's happening in connection with what is being said or heard. Mary listened to Jesus. Are we listening? She displayed ready ears by the position and priority she placed herself in relation to Christ. Your position portrays your priority. Your position portrays your priority. What are you in close proximity to? Mary's ears were listening to the Master. This brings us to the second part, eyes. While Mary's ears were on Jesus, Martha's eyes, physically and in her mind, were on tasks. Mary was focused more on the work for the Lord, more than she was focused on the work of the Lord. Let me say that again. Mary was focused more on the work for the Lord, more than she was focused on the work of the Lord. Maybe you've been here. I know that I have, but if I can encourage you from my experience, this is a tightrope to walk that we've never been designed to be on. It leads us into thinking that either end is tied to our efforts and actions, which is not the truth. Yes, we don't just sit around, but it's an issue of what's out in front. Our work for him or his work in us? What's leading our thinking and our focus? Is it what we do, or is it what he is doing and our response to that? There's a subtle but profound difference. Martha's eyes were distracted by all the preparations to be made, and she probably felt that no one else had seen them, as the scripture indicates. That leads us to our third part, worryship. Yes, it's a made-up word, but how many of us have mixed this up? What controls you consumes you, and vice versa. What consumes you controls you. Martha was worried and upset. "Lord, don't you care?" she bemoaned. Of course he cares. He cares for you, and you can cast every single little, big, and in-between care on him because he cares for you. Right where you're at, right where you're watching, right with the day that you've had, the evening you've had, the afternoon you're having, wherever you're at, wherever you watch, whatever time it is. He cares for you. So when you come to him with a question of, Lord, don't you care? There's a feeling and an emotion that's leading our response to say, God, I don't feel like you care, but I believe that he wants to respond with a resounding and inextricably clear, yes, I've always cared for you. Martha's emotion led her to react. I wonder what she was expecting Jesus to say. Wow, Martha, you're right. Mary, what have you been doing? Let's hop to it. And Martha's focus was on herself. I'm doing this all by myself. Tell her to help me. Now, we don't know if Martha asked Mary to help, but something in her stewed and brewed until she wasn't able to keep it in. A part of the definition of worship is adoration or devotion, comparable to religious homage shown toward a person or principle. Now, I'm not saying Martha worshiped her work, but it's possible that could have been her or any one of us. Jesus said Mary has chosen what is better: listening, God's presence, relationships over tasks. This doesn't mean we're lazy or let things that need to be done undone. No, it means we must guard and gauge the condition of our heart to see that we don't worship our worries, our frets, our fears, focusing on them and not surrendering them to Christ, and in turn, letting them take hold of our minds or in our minds. No, we must 2 Corinthians 10:5 our thoughts, taking every thought captive and making it obedient to Christ. Maybe you're watching, and as I mentioned earlier, the chances are using social media that increasingly we've been affected by worry or anxiety, and maybe you would consider yourself or self-proclaim as a worrier. I'd challenge you to honestly ask yourself, have you truly surrendered your cares and worries to Him? If so, think about giving presents at Christmas. You don't ask someone to have a gift, let them unwrap it, and then say, hope you enjoyed it, and take it back. If you've given your worries and cares to God, let Him do with them what He wants. He loves you right where you sit. Worship in all we do is our priority. Relationship over task is our method. May we fully and truly worship the one true God displayed to us through Jesus Christ's life, death on the cross, and resurrection, and not live a life of worryship.